Hey folks, it's your main man E, and I'm here at my property in Santa Barbara. We got, I don't know, 10 dogs down there, perfectly quiet. Got a handful of dogs up there, perfectly quiet. It's always just quiet here, folks, even with a bunch of dogs, and that's because we're masters at managing multi-dog households, multi-dog situations. And so I wanted to do this video, talk about these two gentlemen here, and they came in here, and this is a pretty common situation. Two dogs, real nice dogs, but together they are kind of like having three dogs. Individually, they're honestly pretty easy to communicate with, but when they get together, they get really riled up and they get really carried away. And this is very common in multi-dog households, that people get a dog and then they get a second dog, usually thinking, hey, I'm going to get this second dog and he's going to help exercise my first dog, or he's going to help keep my first dog company when I'm away. And that's true. Having a multi-dog household can be incredible. It can be so great to watch the dogs play and take them places together and have them have their interactions and their relationship with each other. But at the same time, if we don't set things up for success, a multi-dog household can very quickly make it not like having two dogs, folks. Like I said, it can be like having three dogs. So if you do the multi-dog household, yeah, you can have two dogs, and I think it actually will be easier in some ways than having one dog, especially if you have the right combination like these two guys. But if you do it wrong, yeah, it's not going to be less work than having two dogs, as much as that was your initial intention. So what are some things to think about when you have the multi-dog households? First of all, folks, I know people aren't going to want to hear this. I know people are going to think it's not necessary. Crates, folks. You need to have crates when you have a multi-dog household, or at the very least, you need to have very clear places where the dogs can go to. Like, they each have a separate bedroom, they have a separate bathroom. Maybe one of them goes in the car, in the garage where it's cool, but the dogs need to have two separate places so that you can deal with the dogs separately and have one of the dogs just completely out of the picture. What'll happen if you don't do that is basically the dogs are constantly interacting with each other and giving each other information, getting each child riled up, reinforcing bad behaviors. One of them barks and the other one barks. One of them jumps up and then the other one runs over and goes and steals a cookie because nobody's looking. And very quickly, their relationship with each other, it takes precedence over our relationship with the dog. And so it is important to have crates. And that way you can also establish separately, hey, how are these dogs separately? I know one of them jumps when people come over, but does this guy jump when people come over? Well, if not, maybe that guy's in the crate and this guy's out greeting people, and this guy can observe from a distance. Oh man, that's interesting. This guy gets to get out. He gets to meet people. He's not jumping on people. Or perhaps one of them really has a nice walk and is really easy to walk on the leash, and the other one's a struggle to walk on the leash. Well, leave one of them home in the crate and take the one that's easy to walk and enjoyable to walk on a walk. Same thing with affection and petting. What if one of them has been really good and trying really hard that day and the other one's not really been trying that hard to please you? Well, don't be petting both of them at the same time. Put the one that's been a stinkhead away, and the one that's been a really obedient dog, give them a bunch of love. Folks, just by controlling access to you, by controlling access to the space in the house, and access to each other, you have such a great opportunity to show the dogs what behaviors you want by simply saying, hey, look, I'm only going to have dogs out that are behaving in a way that I really like, that are attentive to me. And, until you guys understand when you're out together, you have to listen to me and you have to behave yourselves. You're not going to be out roaming around together unattended. And, when you're around me, you have to listen. And that brings me to my second point, this kind of idea that when the dogs are interacting, we don't have to interrupt that. When they're playing, we don't have to interrupt that. When they're investigating stuff together, we don't have to interrupt that. I would say it's the opposite. I would say when we have two dogs, it's so important that we explain to them. It does not matter what your brother's doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. As soon as I say your name, you have to stop what you're doing and at least look at me and check in. And if you guys are playing and you're having the best time in the world, I have to use my voice to stop the gameplay, have you check in with me, and then I can reward you with stopping and checking in with me. I can reward you then with more play. But if you guys are playing and interacting and then I say stop and you don't stop and you just keep playing, the play basically becomes a reward for ignoring me. And so it's so important. Hey, guys, come here. Even if they're smelling together, call them over to you. If they're playing together, stop, call them over to you. Okay, break, and then let them go back to doing what they're doing. Okay, the third thing I'm thinking of, so we went over the first thing, right? You got to have crates and also beds. You got to have these placemats where the dog's tied up and they have a place to stay in their bed, and you can have 2 separate beds for both dogs, okay? Crates for both dogs, or a bedroom or somewhere quiet for both dogs to stay separately. Practice interacting with the dogs in a way where you're interrupting them when they're engaging or communicating with each other. Hey, guys, come here. And when they're doing the same thing or they're playing with each other, call them over, okay? Now, the final thing I'm going to mention is recognize the dogs are very different. And, in this case, he's older and he's younger. So don't think in a multi-dog households, the 2 dogs are going to have the same rules and the same responsibilities, the same expectations. I might have one dog that stays in a crate because they get into the trash when I leave and they're a younger dog. I might have an older dog that doesn't even need a leash when we go on a walk. Or opposite. I was walking my 2 dogs today and one of them needs a training collar, a prong collar, even though she's almost 13. My other dog doesn't need any training collar at all. She'd walk with me without a leash. They just have different personalities. Same thing with toys and resources. You might find one dog, hey, he can have a toy out and he's not going to gnaw on it until he wears his teeth down. But this guy, you leave a toy out with this guy all the time and you'll see he's going to gnaw on it and it's going to eventually wear down on some of the enamel on his teeth. So it's so important to assess and evaluate each dog individually and realize, hey, where are they both at? And let's be clear that we're using them in a way together where they're able to see, hey man, this guy's doing the right behavior. I want to do what he does. And oh, this guy's doing the right behavior. I want to do what he does. If we let them out together and let's say one of them barks and jumps on guests when they come over, then the guy who's actually really calm with guests and really gentle, he might get riled up and he might think, oh man, I'm supposed to get all riled up when guests come over. Let's say one of them just knows how to calmly lay down and, not dig holes and not bark at stuff on the other side of the fence when they're in the backyard alone. And then you bring this knucklehead in there and he starts digging and he starts barking at things. And next thing they're both barking at things. So realize they're very different, and whether it's temporary or whether it's permanent, it's completely okay and advisable to have different sets of rules, different expectations. And in doing that, the chances that you will get the dogs eventually on the same page, it will be more likely because you'll be able to see, oh man, it's really this guy who doesn't come back when called. This guy by himself comes back when called every single time. Oh, it's him. He's the one basically telling this guy, no man, don't come back when called. Do what I say. So if you do these 3 things, have a separate bed, separate crate, separate places for both the dogs. If you, realize the dogs are different, have different sets of rules for them, different sets of expectations. And if you practice interrupting the dogs when they're playing, when they're interacting, smelling together, even snuggling together, I promise you, you're going to be headed in the direction of having an enjoyable experience with 2 dogs like I have, where I don't feel like having 2 dogs is harder than having 1 dog. Even though I own really challenging dogs, I feel like, hey, I've got different dogs for different purposes and it suits me. I got 1 dog that I can leave out and leave in my truck and she's going to make me feel safe. She's very protective. I got another dog, if I want to go places and meet people and socialize, she's super, super social. And I got 1 dog that does my nice morning 30-minute walk with me. I got another dog I play ball with in the afternoon that makes me happy. So take things into consideration. Let me know if you have any questions. I can't emphasize these 3 things enough, and promise you, if you try this stuff for 2 or 3 months, you're going to have a different relationship with both your dogs and you're going to have a different household. So remember, as always, folks, we don't blame them. We train them. If we love them, we lead them. So until next time, we're always available, of course, online. followtheleadercanine.com for remote consultations, and you can find my poetry book on Amazon, Loving, Leading, and Losing, Stories from the Dogs That Trained Me. Okay, folks, until then, we'll see you then.